Good morning, everyone. This is Dennis McLaughlin presenting topic 3, the 3 perspectives of educational leadership. But before continuing, I'd like to acknowledge the work that Dr. Peter Ivers has done in presenting this particular set of slides. I'm a dumbass with regard to this, and Peter spent a lot of time helping me, and we're here at his home Sunday morning making sure this works. Thank you, Peter. Now, these perspectives are about leadership, challenging the status quo and asking students to explore alternatives to the status quo. These are 3 lenses we're looking at. It's critical leadership or critical theory, feminist theory, and First Nations. Now, these particular theories interrogate traditional assumptions of educational leadership. They're suggesting that the status quo may not be appropriate, that the foundations of what we do now can be challenged. Consequently, we need to engage in discourses of emancipation, liberation, social justice, and looking at and critiquing alternative frameworks to those who hold power among our society at present. In terms of education, the foremost critical theorist was a scholar called Paulo Freire, and he saw education as about challenging the status quo and offering change. Perhaps his most famous quotation is, "Education does not transform the world. Education changes people, and it's the people who change the world." Critical theory looks at organisations because organisations attract people who would like to have power or who have power and they want to use that power for one reason or another. Words that are often used in this context are power hegemony and concerted control. Let's have a look at the definition of those. Power is the possibility of imposing one's will upon the behaviour of other people. In contrast, leadership, authentic leadership, is about influence, and people start to choose to change because what's being offered is better than the status quo. Hegemony is the predominant influence over others. You will see in the US that there's a predominant Trump hegemony over many people in the United States. That sort of philosophy, a philosophy that sees people that from another country as problematic, that sees making the buck as the bottom line. Those sort of things are based on values. And concerted control concerns on how we develop norms and values that are dominated or predominated by the powers, and particularly political powers. Every political power has a particular philosophical base. They try to attract people to that philosophical base and use or abuse that philosophical base in the use of power. So we're looking at critical theory in particular. Critical theorists start to study the lived experiences of real people. These lived experiences show how they are experiencing life, what are those experiences that engage them and liberate them, and those that deny them power. Critical theorists examine social conditions to bring hidden structures to life. No one says that they are trying to control people out front. It's done more subtly. Clearly, critical theories align themselves with the interests of those who are being depressed by the dominant culture.
Gina is in the 6th grade, and she's very excited to move to middle school. She wants to learn more about science and math, and maybe invent some cool technology when she's a grown-up. But there's an issue. Gina isn't from the best neighborhood. She's not white. and she's a woman. All three of those things can impact her education and, as an extension, her future. Critical theory is a philosophy that involves being critical of the prevailing view of society. In many cases, that means looking closer at beliefs that might favor privileged people, like rich, white men, over other people like Gina. Critical theory in education is about questioning how our educational system can best offer education to all people. It offers opportunities and understanding of the different perspective of disadvantaged members of society. For example, poor children like Gina often go to more poorly funded schools than their middle and upper class counterparts, and less funding can mean issues like availability of technology or good teachers. Let's look at how critical theory plays out in education and what schools and teachers can do to be inclusive of all types of students. In today's world, technology is a major part of everyday life. From smartphones, or even plain old cell phones, to computers to tablets, everyone seems to have lots of interaction with technology. Except Gina, that is. She's in the 6th grade and her parents can't afford a computer, so she doesn't have one at home. They also can't afford to buy her a cell phone. Tablet? She's seen them advertised on the television, but never seen one in person. Technology is not only a major part of life for most people, it is a big part of success in the business world. Most jobs require computer literacy, and many of them require a basic understanding of smartphones and tablets too. As an extension of that, most schools have technology as part of their everyday activities. Whether it's typing an English paper on the computer or using a tablet to work on a math app, technology seems ubiquitous in schools. But there are problems with access to technology. Poorer schools can have a harder time getting technology in the hands of their students. Remember that critical theory in education is about making sure that every student gets a good education, so lack of technology in poorer schools can be a problem that keeps everyone from getting a good education. Unfortunately, it's not just about whether or not schools have computers. Critical theory also recognizes that people come into school with different advantages and disadvantages, and focuses on how to help every student achieve their potential. Take Gina, for example. She hasn't had access to technology outside school like many other students have. Her teachers don't understand why she has trouble operating the computer, or why she's so slow when she's typing. They sometimes get impatient, and even the ones who aren't rude about it still don't give her enough time to do her work on the computer. Like Gina, many poor students in America have lower technological fluency than middle and upper class students. This springs from the fact that poor students might not be exposed to technology until much later than more well-off kids. While some children might play with computers or smartphones when they are still potty training, others don't get to work on a computer until they are in school. That puts them way behind their classmates. What should Gina's teachers do? Giving students time to explore technology and learn how to use it is an important step that teachers can take to be inclusive of all students. With a little extra time, Gina can become familiar with laptops and really be able to use them to her advantage. Gina faces more challenges than just those brought on by technology, though. Remember that she really likes math and science and wants to do well in those areas. Unfortunately, in middle school, girls tend to end up with less interest in math and science. Many studies have shown that this might be due to social pressure. Boys are encouraged to be good at math and science, and girls are encouraged not to be good at it. Sometimes this happens in subtle ways. Classroom talk can be gendered, with boys being called on more than girls. Teachers can offer girls more opportunities to talk, especially in math and science classrooms, which can go a long way towards helping them succeed in school. Classroom talk can also be racial in subtle ways. Different races, genders, and cultures express themselves differently and react to things differently. Studies have shown that white students and African American students understand and respond to questions from teachers differently. If Gina's teachers can be aware that different groups might interpret questions differently, they can avoid believing that Gina is not as smart or has a problem. Racial and gender minorities also face some issues with classroom activities. Remember that Gina is not white, but all the writers, historical figures, and scientists that they study in school seem to be white. Subtly, this is giving Gina the message that racial minorities can't be good writers, scientists, or politicians. By offering examples of racial minorities and women in class, Gina's teachers can help her see that people just like her can be anything they want to be. Again, critical theory focuses on how teachers can help students who are not part of the majority gain an equitable education. Critical theory involves being critical of the established beliefs of society. In education, one major area this plays a role is in the access of and expectations around technology. Understanding that poorer students might not have had as much exposure to technology may help teachers be patient and offer more time for them to learn. In addition, being familiar with the gendered, racial, and cultural elements of classroom talk can also help teachers create a more supportive and inclusive classroom environment.
Paulo Freire's classic book is called Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and he started to emphasise and explore how power in schools either liberates or oppresses people, both students, teachers, and the school system. The school system reflects the ideology of those in political power.